All right, guys, buy now or wait for a year. Let's talk about it.
You better get fired up.
Before we even get into this, man, I want to tell you I'm pretty doggone excited. Literally 5 minutes ago, somebody sent me, I won't tell you what it is quite yet, but I said, hey, when I get to the point in my day where it's 3, 4, 5 o'clock, and every once in a while, maybe once or twice a week, at that point in the day, I don't have any appointments left, which is awesome, right? I'm going to make my calls. I'm going to get in there and get some sales in, but I'm stuck in this little office here in my house. It is nice. I'm staring literally this door right out here. If I open this, I'm staring at my pool out there. What is it today? 86 degrees, 90 degrees? It's beautiful. But if I bring my laptop out there, I can't see my screen because it's so doggone sunny in South Florida. So he showed me this little shade you can put over your laptop so you can sit in the pool and enjoy it, but you can still see your screen. And I was like, oh my, dude, this thing's like $50. And it's the coolest doggone thing. Like, that is the $50 that's made me the happiest per dollar invested ever. I haven't bought it yet, but I'm going to buy it right after this, man. So anyway, talking about investments, let's get into real estate and ask ourselves the question. I hear this all the time, probably at least once or twice a week. Joe, does it make sense for me to buy now, or should I wait a year? Or I'll hear people just say, waiting for the market to crash. And they've been saying it since maybe 2012, right? And it's just been going up and up and up and up. Man, by the time they buy, they're going to be behind so doggone much. It's painful and it changes your life drastically. But the market does turn. We saw it in 2008. The market dropped. And at that time, I was selling in Minnesota, and I can tell you homes were down 30 to 40% from their high, right? So there are changes in market values that can impact you financially, impact, the rest of your life. So really kind of having that conversation. And today, I'm not really talking to those people who own and they're like, hey, should I sell my home and buy now or not? I'll tell you with those people, and there's an asterisk to what I'm saying. What I'm about to say isn't 100% true, but I want to get across this idea because a lot of people don't think about this. If you've got a $400,000 home and you're going to buy a $600,000 home, and you're like, I'm going to wait until the market drops because you're thinking you're going to save money on that 600 grand. Okay, cool. Well, guess what else drops when that $600,000 home drops, assuming you're correct? The home you're going to sell, right? That home's going to drop too. And alternatively, you might get excited if your home goes up. It was worth 4, now it's worth 5. Great, I'm going to sell, get that money, and go buy a bigger home. Okay, cool. But now that home that you wanted to buy for 600, it's 725, right? So it impacts both homes. So don't forget that when you're crunching your numbers. If you are moving up, you would prefer for the market to drop because the drop on the bigger price home as a percentage is likely going to be bigger depending on 37 different variables. But usually, if you're moving down, maybe you're 50 years old, 60 years old, your last kid just got out of the house, you got a 3,500 square foot home, and you want to move down to something that's maybe 1,800 to 2,000 square feet. In that case, you're hoping the market goes up because you're bigger, more valuable asset. Usually, not always, but usually you want that to go up. Yeah, you're going to pay a higher price on the lower one, but as a percentage, it's a smaller increase than the increase on the asset you just sold, right? So anyway, with all of that math, that's not who we're talking to. We're talking to people who rent right now or maybe live with mom and dad or, whatever the case is. They don't own a property and they can choose to keep living with mom and dad or live with their friends or rent or whatever it is. And should they continue to do it or not? Well, number one, I would say this. If you're concerned about cash, right? If you can stay in the place you're in and all you've got to come up with is your monthly rent payment or, the payment to mom and dad or whatever it is, then really the only cash commitment you're making is that monthly payment. And you're going to have that same monthly payment if you purchase a home. And it could be higher, it could be lower, it could be the same, but you're going to have that same payment, right? But if you're being booted from mom and dad's home or you're being booted from your current rental, which is the case in a lot of situations, you're going to have to come up with, in probably 95% of cases, first month's rent, last month's rent, a deposit, a cleaning fee, an application fee, a background check fee. There's a lot of different fees, right? So let's just say you're looking at a $2,000 rental. You're going to need $2,000 for the deposit, $2,000 for first month, $2,000 for last month. That's $6,000, right? Then you're going to need a cleaning fee, which I usually see is between $100 and $300. let's just say 200 bucks. We're at $6,200. Application fees $100, so there's 6,300 bucks. And we won't even count the background check. Sometimes it's 50, sometimes it's 100, but we won't even count it. You need $6,300 down. Well, guess what? If you're going after a home, and especially if you're a VA buyer, you can do it for $0 if you can negotiate the closing costs to be covered by the seller, right? Which in this market, a lot of times you can. If you're even a conventional buyer, you're a first-time home buyer, which means you can get in at that 3% down payment in a lot of cases. And let's say you've got 3.5% in closing costs, that's 6.5%. Well, if you can get the seller to cover 3%, you need to come up with roughly 3.5 on, let's say 300 grand. That's 10.5. You're already at $6,200. You're 2/3 of the way there, and you could actually own something, right? So as far as cash is considered, don't forget, you've already got to come up with cash. And so remember that that's a big part of it when you're going in, right? Second thing is credit. A lot of people say, I don't have the credit. I got to work on my credit. Listen, you got to have credit to rent a lot of places. Most places that are renting properties out to renters, they have minimum credit scores that pretty closely mirror the credit scores that a lender is going to want. And I'll tell you right now, you can get into a home with a 500 credit score or better. I will tell you though, I've sold a lot of homes. I've never had anybody get in with a 500 credit score. The reason isn't because they can't. The reason is because the terms suck. The rate's a little bit higher. You're going to have 10% down instead of 3.5. A lot of different reasons you wouldn't want to buy at 500. And honestly, if you were my kid, I'd look at your situation and say, let's just wait, right? Because if you can improve your credit score and get up to a 580, your terms are going to be so much better. It's going to help you financially. Are you going to be behind a year, 6 months, 3 months, however long it takes you to get there? Sure. But we can do it. It's way easier to go from 5 to 580, that 80-point difference, than to go from 7 to 780. That's much more challenging, right? So the lower your score is, the easier it is to get up. And there are a lot of different ways you can do it, a lot of different people who can help you. And if you've got a good lender, they're going to put you on a program to help you out, right? Guys, as I continue on, if you've got questions, whether you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, feel free to put them in the comments section. I'm more than happy to answer them before the end of this video. So going back, we've talked about cash, we've talked about credit, but what about the market? I mean, just plain, is it a good decision or is it not a good decision? I'll tell you this, go ask 10 realtors, 10 financial managers, 10 economists, and you're going to get 10 different answers. Well, there would be 30 different answers on what the market's going to do. It's impossible to tell. And, you know, there are a lot of factors feeding into the fact that the market will go down. And there are a lot of factors feeding into the fact that the market will go up. And in all honesty, it is impossible to know which factors are going to have the biggest impact and how impactful those factors are going to be. So we don't know, number one, if the market's going to go up or down. I did just put a post up on Facebook, and it said, from memory, I think I've got this though, if you look at the March sales in 2022 versus the March sales in 2023 in the United States, the average price came down 1.7%. So for every $100,000 your home was worth, you lost $1,700 in value. If you're looking at a $400,000 home, quick math, I think that's about $6,800, let's say, give or take. I think that's correct, but you lost $6,800 last year in value on your property, right? So if it was worth $4,000, now it's worth, what is that, $393,200. That's a bummer, right? And that's something that would scare a renter into saying, hey, I'm going to rent it together another year. Who knows what happens? Now, you might be watching me from Texas or Washington or New York, but I'll tell you, if you're down here in Port St. Lucie, Florida, or anywhere in South Florida, I just pulled Port St. Lucie numbers, the same numbers, March over March, 2022 versus 2023. And while the rest of the nation went down 1.7%, we went up 2.6%. So now on that $400,000 home, oh my gosh, why am I doing this to myself? You went up $10,400. So instead of 400 grand, it's worth 410 and a little bit of change, right? That's awesome. You're never going to get that on a rental. You never leave a rental and they give you back money because their property went up. Yeah, they'll give you back your deposit, maybe part of it if you're lucky, but you're not going to get part of the buildup that they've had during that time, right? It just doesn't make sense. So Margaret Service, number one, I appreciate that. Number two, I saw your post. Margaret Service is on here. I want to talk about her just for a second. We'll come back. So she wrote, "Your mind still amazes me." She's the one, right? You got to amaze somebody in life. Margaret Service is one of the sweetest people I know, hardest workers. When I started out in real estate back in, I think it was '04, it was a long damn time ago in Minnesota, I worked at a place called Edina Realty. It's one of the only 3 brokerages I've ever worked at. Loved it to death. I'm pretty sure Margaret still works there. And she's got a big heart, huge heart, phenomenal person. And she just put a post up today of this couple she brought out. They look like they were probably in their late 20s, mid 20s. And in the house, I'm guessing it was final walkthrough. He got down on one knee and proposed to her, right? So, what a magical day. What a cool little story. And Margaret, there's nobody better to share it with than you, just because you're such a loving person. So, just want to say, I thought that was a cool post that you threw up. But anyway, looking back at, okay, is the market going to turn? Is it not going to turn? Number one, we don't know. And number two, you've got to look at how much money you're giving up if you rent, even if the market does come down, right? So let's talk about this a little bit. If you were to purchase a home today, and because you're paying down your mortgage, right? I can only give you my mortgage. I'll share with you my numbers on my mortgage. On my mortgage, God, I wish I had an exact. I'm going to make them up a little bit. Well, let's not look it up. I'm going to pull up an amortization schedule. If you guys don't know what an amortization schedule is, it basically shows you what percentage of your monthly payment, whether it's a 15-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage, goes towards principal versus interest, right? And you'll see in the beginning, it looks like this. You'll see in the beginning, it's paying very little principal off and it's high in interest. And then over time, it becomes high in principal, low in interest. But even though it's a smaller amount you towards the principal and you wish it was higher, it is amazing how much does go to principal. Okay, so I'm going to punch in my loan. So I bought my home 2 years ago for $390. I overpaid 25 grand. They were asking 365, but I did not want to lose it. Checked all my boxes, and honestly, it's worth over 500 grand now. Why do I say that? Because guys, I did nothing to get that extra roughly $1,000 in equity, right? I just lived in a house. Guess what? If I would have rented, I would have lived in the house. I still would have paid a monthly payment and it would have been roughly the same. It probably would have been a little bit more because think if I've got a monthly payment of whatever, I think mine is $2,200. Guess what? If I'm going to rent it to you, I can't charge you $2,200. I got to make money. I'm taking all this risk. I got to charge you 24, 25, 2,600. So as a renter for an apples to apples house, you're probably going to pay more in rent than you're going to in a mortgage. The only time I see that not true, and it's so infrequent that I really hate sharing this because I think people are going to think it happens a lot. It doesn't. Is maybe Joe is 70 years old. I've owned that home forever. It's paid for, and I'm just not paying attention to market rates. So even though rents have gone up to 2,500, I'm still at 1,900. And I just haven't been paying attention. It rarely happens, but it does happen, right? But with the exception of that, you're almost always for the same house, apples to apples, you're paying more in rent than you're going to pay owning the home. And I just described why, right? So my mortgage, $390 over 30 years. And I was lucky enough to get a nice low interest rate of 2.25. Let's calculate this out. And I want to see, okay, here it is. So I am paying in principal roughly $760 to $770 a month that first year. So let's just say I'm paying $765 times 12. I could literally look at what it is. Yeah, let's just do it exact. So in the first 12 months, I now owe $387.91. So I've paid down $390 minus, oh, let's do it again. Okay, so $390 that I paid for the home, but now, regardless of where the market's at, let's say it's straight lined. I know I just said it went up 2.6% in the last year, but let's say it didn't. It's exactly the same, right? Minus the 381, where am I? 566 that I still owe. My home, even though it's worth exactly the same in this example I'm giving you, has $8,400 of equity in it, 8,434 to be exact. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. That 8,400 is what you're not getting by renting, right? So if the market were to drop 84, let's take 84, 84.34. And even though I'm talking about a $390,000 price tag, this is going to be roughly the same whether you're buying a $200,000 home or a $1 million home, right? 84.34 divided by the 390 that I bought it for. That's 2.16%. Just say 2.1. That means if the market were to come down 2.1% every single year, and oh, by the way, the percentage that I'm paying in principal goes up every single year. So even though I paid $84.34 the first year, the second year is going to be $10,000, right? And it continues to go up and up and up. So if I'm saying the market drops 2.1% next year and maybe 2.2 the next year, 2.4 the next year, whatever, and I go to sell, I'm still breaking even, right? If the market flatlines, I'm making $8,000, $9,000 a year that no renter is making. And if the market goes up, which in my research, the housing market has gone up on average 22 out of every 30 years, right? What is 22? I'm going to guess that's about 70% divided by 30. It's 73%. 73% of the years, the housing market goes up. And when it goes down, it tends to go down 1 or 2%, kind of like it did last year in the US, right? You don't see a lot of 20, 30% drops in the market, which is what everybody's afraid of. You just don't see it. And listen, I know you can say, yeah, but right now we got the Ukraine thing, and is the dollar going to be the main currency? And we've got political strife, and we've got, guys, go back and look. For the last 10 years, you could make that argument about whatever was going on in the nation at that time. And I know it because I watch it. And I've thought it. I thought, man, looking at all this, it would make sense that the market would drop. Nope, kept going up year after year after year after year since I believe 2010. That's 13 years. Now it's going to come down eventually. It just did. Now it might plateau, it might come up, it might go down, who knows? But my point is this. The market has to drop roughly 2.1%. That's a rough estimate for you to break even. If it drops a half a point, a point and a half, 2%, you still would have been better off purchasing, right? And if you look at people who bought at the highest point in the market, which from memory, I think was September of 06, and they stayed in that home for 10 years, which if you're buying a home, not everybody, but a lot of people are going to stay there for 5, 10, 15 years. If you would have bought at the dumbest time, we could argue, right? September of 06, it was the highest point of the market. And then you took that whole dip and you waited 10 years, that home would have been worth, on average, the average priced home in America would have been worth a little over $50,000 more than it was when you purchased it. That's huge. If you'd rented that whole time, not only would you not have that 50-some thousand dollars, but your rent would have gone up, 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 up every single year. Your principal and interest, unless you've got an adjustable rate mortgage, which they don't really do a lot of anymore. Do they do it? Yeah, they do it, but not a lot. I saw a lot of them in 06, 07, 08. Don't see a lot of them anymore, which in my opinion is a good thing. For the 99% of people that I've ever dealt with, the 100% of people that I've dealt with in the last 4 years, all of them have fixed rate loans, meaning their principal and interest payment is never going to change. So my house that I bought for $390, let's say in 20 years, it's worth $1 million. And I've only paid off 20 years of that mortgage. I still owe 10 years. Let's say I haven't paid it off. I'll have it paid off by then. My principal and interest will be exactly the same in 20 years as it is now. And I can't start that incredible reverse snowball effect until the day I purchase. So all of that said, it sounds like I'm pushing you to buy, right? I wouldn't say buy or don't buy. I wouldn't say rent or don't rent. I would say don't let your fear guide you, and let the numbers, let the facts, let the statistics drive what it is you're going to do. Sit down with some pros, sit down with a financial advisor, sit down with a real estate nerd, and just talk about the numbers. Talk about what does it look like over the span of 50 years? Has it dropped enough to where I would wish I hadn't bought more than 5 times in 50 years? Right? If not, odds are I'm fearful over something that's very unlikely to happen. But really look at those odds and don't listen to everything I'm saying, right? What I'm preaching kind of pushes you towards buying. And I'll tell you, if you were one of my daughters, I'd absolutely tell you buy. I don't care if the market goes down 20%. As long as you live there for 5, 10, 15 years, which is what most people do, and you have the ability to do, right? Market goes up, you got options. Market goes down, just stay in your house. I don't like my house. Well, too bad, right? Like, I got it. We live in America and everything comes with butterscotch on it. But listen, if you've got to live in a house that you decided to purchase today a little bit longer than you wanted to make up for market drops, isn't that better than just throwing cash out the window every single month towards rent? Oh, by the way, you're paying that landlord's mortgage down. He's thanking you every single month. I would tell my daughters to do it. But again, I say all this to say, don't listen to Joe Rosen. Don't listen to CNN. Don't listen to Fox. Don't listen to any of them. Sit down with some people who can pull data, pull statistics, do your own Google research, and let that drive whether or not you want to purchase or rent. If you've got any questions, anything you want to throw by me, whatever, it's pretty easy to find me, guys. I'm all over Facebook, all over YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, and you can, Google me. You'll find my number, my email, all that good stuff. Reach out anytime. More than happy to help anybody with this decision, even if you're not in my market. I'm not doing it just because, hey, I might get a sale out of this. I'm doing it because I want to help everybody. So even if you're not in my market and I can have a discussion with you and help you make a clear, educated decision, I'd love to do it. Guys, thanks for joining me and have an amazing weekend. Take care.